Welcome back from the challenge. We'd love to hear, what are you grateful for? Feel free to share that with us by using hashtag #Perfect10Marriage.
So now let's talk about intimacy. It's a great topic, my favorite topic to end with. And we're not just talking about sex. There's so much more to intimacy than just our physical relationship. I think one of the most important things that we can keep in mind is that we're always changing. I'll never forget the time that I knew that there was a lot going on, you were worn out, and so I think I called you and said, hey, don't worry about dinner, I'm gonna pick up dinner on the way home. And so as I was driving by this pizza place, I'm like, oh, Aaron loves pizza. And so I pulled in and ordered your favorite pizza. It's pineapple and ham pizza. Proudly brought that home, handed it to you, was waiting for the big, huge display of affection for bringing you your favorite pizza. Do you remember what happened?
I do remember, because what Greg had forgotten is that I had developed gluten intolerance. So now I ate gluten-free pizza, and I actually didn't even like pineapple and ham pizza anymore. I liked pepperoni mushroom gluten-free pizza. And I know in that moment, Greg was like, I don't even know what a gluten is.
No. I just said, hey, put the gluten on my side of the pizza. I thought it was a topping or something. No. And I'll never forget that moment of just realizing, when did she stop liking pineapple and ham? And all it did was help me to remember that I need to make sure that I'm staying current with Aaron.
And so we want to encourage you to keep the attitude of curiosity. That I know that Greg is always changing, I'm always changing, and if I keep the attitude of curiosity, well then I'm not going to assume that I know what he's thinking or feeling or what he wants on his pizza even. That asking and being curious about who our spouse is today.
You know, another important part of intimacy is to remember, like we said earlier, that intimacy is more than just sex. Sex is definitely an important part of intimacy. But I think for every human being, there's a deep longing to be known. And that's what I love about this idea of being curious. Not only is curiosity about staying current, but I need to stay curious about what's really going on in the inside, because I want to deeply know Aaron. Intimacy is such an important part of our relationship. So let's find out from our couples how they continue to grow in their intimacy.
I would say that our culture told us that once we were married, we were going to be having sex all day long, every day, everywhere. And that's not true.
Sexual education is not very common in Egypt. And even for new generations, we are not having it in a transparent way, because sometimes we are shy.
I tell you honestly, the expectations about the frequency, the importance of the frequency, it was one of the hugest parts of the culture serves. Usually young couples are disappointed because even life is not the same after marriage.
Both coming from a Catholic background and having waited for marriage, just sort of shake off a little bit of the, it's naughty. Do you think? Yeah, that I shouldn't be doing this, because for so long you've been like, no, we can't do that. And then all of a sudden you can do it and you're like, oh, hang on a second. Yeah. You have to sort of shift your perspective a little bit. I think that's changing a little bit now these days, but without it's being taught.
We come from a culture that's not open-minded. It's routine. It's not spontaneous. That is very secretive. That is very set in its ways. If you can recall a time you saw your parents kiss in front of you.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah. There's no intimacy.
No.
Yeah.
Because what are you teaching the kids if you do that in front of them? You close the curtains, you switch off the lights. It has to be
dark.
It has to be dark. And you don't get to appreciate the next person's body because you're ashamed about your own body. That's why you do it in the dark. Because no one must know about it. So much that even when we were married and Doreen said we were pregnant, I was like, oh my gosh,
we have
our
proof.
Parents will know that we are having sex, you know? So It might seem very stupid to someone across the world that we feel like this, but this is who we are.
Yeah.
And that's how we were raised.
Since we decide to keep ourselves in purity during our relationship before getting marriage, once we get married, it was like discovering each other. We got to know really quickly that sex is physical, but it's also emotional relationship. It has a lot to do with the relationship and with even a spiritual aspect of our lives.
One of the high expectations that community shows is about not about the intimacy, it's about sex itself. So it turned to be that intimacy is the best part of it. It's not the action, it's the surrounding of it. I think this was one of the things that changed after marriage.
You've got to be willing to realize that quite possibly your expectations have been formed wrongly. And I think it's important. We live in a very porn-saturated, a very hypersexualized culture that has an emphasis on the physical, biological act of sex and not much more. And for us as Christians, we know that that isn't the be-all and end-all. And I think often there's a real danger, even Christians take that sort of stuff into their marriage and they have this expectation of what they think sexual intimacy should be, and it's not correct. I think the most beautiful thing about it is really when there's just that sort of raw, honest intimacy. It's not about the sex or the sexual intimacy. It's just about being together naked and having a conversation about mundane things. Who's doing the shopping tomorrow? Things like that.
There's a deep level of intimacy that you get to after being sexual with your spouse that you can't compensate with anything else.
And I think the reason why is because you're vulnerable at that stage. So you're at your most vulnerable when you are naked, when you have to bear all your scars. Because dressing up when you first meet someone, you could have all the makeup in the world, you could have all this glorified persona, and then all of that comes off for this intimate session.
And knowing that, when you've seen all of me, you still love me, you still appreciate me, and you still think I'm the most beautiful woman than any other girl you meet on the streets, and you've seen me, all of me, It makes you feel so loved and feel so known by your spouse, being intimate in that way. Like, it makes you feel like your spouse knows you that well, and he still chooses to love, to stay and be with you and do life with you.
Yeah. The other point is, we always tell young people about sex is that it is a 20-year warm-up. And what it means is that it gets better. What it means is that be realistic, that it is not just whatever that you see in Hollywood. That's not real.
It's a learning process. It's not like on the movies, it's just going to happen and boom. It's growing every day. And we've been married for almost 10 years and we're still growing in that area. Things don't magically happen. You make them happen. So I think you don't have to be afraid to open up to your husband or to your wife and tell them what you like and what you don't like, what makes you feel uncomfortable, or what you do like and makes you feel very happy. You have to talk it naturally and don't take it personal. If the other person tells you, what, I did not feel comfortable with this, I did not like this, don't take it personal. They're not offending you. You're growing together. So just remember that the more you talk about it, the more you grow on it, and the better it will get.
2 points I would like to say. Number one is not to compare your situation with any other couple. Number two is to choose your resources. So as long as you choose the right source, you go a healthy life, you go a right life, you go a straight life. So comparing and the sources. Never ask your friends, never ask other couples. You have only one source and you have to go through it to reach your goals.
Yeah, reading from the proper sources, I think. But
Exactly.
knowing more is not a bad thing. It turned to be a very good thing and healthy in intimacy issue. When Chris mentioned the Christian resources, one of the things that I've read early in my marriage and it really affected the idea of the sacrifice. We all have a cross in our rooms or something like that. So the idea is giving more than taking, even in their relation, sounded to be very related to even to this part of our marriage.
I think a lot of discussions need to be had about sex. I think we need to kind of remove this blankets or the secrecy around intimacy and sex. It's a conversation that you guys need to have regularly. Like, how am I doing? Am I still okay?
Keep up the good work.
You know?
We had two very different experiences of that, and so Katie had been very faithful and waiting for marriage. I'd made plenty of mistakes in that regard. So, it's funny what our expectations were, and mine was shaped perhaps a bit more negatively, and you can say in many ways Katie's was shaped more positively, and it was sort of learning to find that happy medium and negotiate that, and me to deal with mine and Katie to deal with her issues.
Coming into the marriage with a child from a previous relationship, I had a lot of shame. So I wasn't even able to connect with my husband on a deep level because I had that I have proof that I was sexual prior to my husband. So for me, I had a lot of shame, and it actually kept me from actually being as open, intimate-wise, and even enjoying sex because I had those emotional issues that I had. And we come from a culture where if you had a child outside of marriage, you were shunned upon. It is a bad thing. So I have a lot of shame, and it's like a barrier that keeps me from getting as close and as intimate as I should be with my husband.
I've learned to understand that with ladies, their body changes and they might not be receptive to having sex like they did before. I've changed my ways, even in appreciating her at her lowest. When I know that she feels like she doesn't feel good, to always reaffirm and reassure her that you're still sexy, boo.
I think also bringing God into that, I think it's probably one area where a lot of Christians initially view it as this sort of, that's the thing we do, and hopefully God's not looking. In actual fact, it's this beautiful participation in this gift that he gives to us, and so why wouldn't he be part of that as well? And I think it's not the separate thing. It's very much part of the gift that God gives us of marriage.
Everything being equal, you will be drawn apart. Yeah, not just in sex, but in every part of your marriage. And therefore, we always say that you have to protect it like a mother hen protecting little chicken, like fierce protection.
Sex is not just the icing on the cake, but a vital ingredient of the cake. Intimacy increases as we get to know each other, not just on the act of sex itself, but also with all the other part of the cake coming together. Our communication gets better, we understand each other better. I know now more than the day when I married Jean that she loves me. I know now with deeper assurance that Jean loves me today more than what I could even imagine, ever possibly imagine on the day of when we got married.
A marriage was created for us to enjoy it, every aspect of it, and sex is a big part of it. I think it's a word for women mostly, to not see it as this thing that is just for your husband or dutiful, but to actually get to a place when you can actually enjoy it for yourself as well. Do it. I think sex is good. I mean, sex is good. Enjoy sex. Enjoy each other.
Sex is good. She said that. I want to just
emphasize
that sex is good.
So challenge number 5, we have saved the best for last. We want you to turn towards your spouse and kiss for 15 seconds. Now, I know you're thinking, oh, this is so awkward. You know, the Guinness World Record for the longest kiss was broken by a couple in Thailand, and they kissed for like 50 some odd hours straight. I know, that's unnecessary. So all we're saying is turn towards your spouse, kiss for 15 seconds. On your mark, get set, go.
Welcome back. Well, okay, some of you need to stop kissing, so I'm thrilled you've taken it that serious. You know, we began our event really talking about that none of us can achieve a perfect 10 marriage because we're imperfect people. And really it's about staying committed to each other and committed to growing. And that's why we covered some important areas that Aaron and I believe are essential to have a strong marriage.
And so we've talked about communication, time together, conflict, shared responsibility, and intimacy. And so I have one more challenge for you. As a couple, choose one of those 5 areas that you're gonna focus on continuing to grow in over the next weeks and months to come.
And don't forget that Focus on the Family is here to help, so be sure to reach out to your local office.
And we have absolutely loved being with you and sharing this time with you. So again, thank you for investing in your marriage and thank you for spending this time with us.